Thank you, Johnny. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining here today, this session on stress, using stress to your advantage. In order to do that, we will be working around your personal stress plan. So at the end of this session, I want you all to have a very concrete personal plan on how to deal with your stress and how to make sure it remains positive. Just before we get started, a little bit about myself. I'm Bert van Rooij. I'm originally a scientist. I studied physics. I worked in software, high-tech medical devices for 10 years. And then I switched careers to a much more softer side of things, well-being at work, stress also. What I like to do very much is be the bridge between my old and my new world. Have a more analytical way of looking at stress, at well-being, but also bringing it to more analytical-minded people who don't like fluffy stuff too much. Like Johnny said, my company, Durven Springen, is Dutch for daring to take a jump, daring to take a leap, because what you always see if you want to improve well-being, both as an individual or as an organization, there's something in the way. You need to change things, and that may take some courage every once in a while. So that's my name. Why the topic with stress? I have a tough relationship with stress myself. I'm quite sensitive to stress. I started to realize. I also noticed, for instance, this workshop I'm preparing, it has quite an effect on my stress level. But I also realized it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's this stress which is making me going. I just have to make sure that I balance it to keep it positive. And that's actually the same for everyone. I'm assuming you, as startup entrepreneurs, you have a much higher stress threshold than I do, but anybody has his or her limits. So it's always remaining within those limits. And that's what the workshop today will be about. Okay, to get started, I first want to make sure, since we will be talking about stress, that we're on the same page here. So just quickly, briefly, an overview of what stress is. Then second, and then that will be quite short, then I'll actually introduce the personal stress plan with 4 levels. First level is knowing your alarm bells regarding to stress. Secondly, dealing with negative stress. Thirdly, using positive stress, quite voluntary using it, but also compensating. And fourthly, building resilience. 4 levels, I will focus mostly on the third because that's the topic today. But I think the others are just important to mention and to incorporate in your plan as well. Good. Talking about stress, the question always comes up, is stress good or bad? And to be honest, it's neither of those, and it's both. Stress actually just is a body system like any other, like heartbeat, like breathing. I like to talk about stress as being a biochemical reaction. It's hormones, chemicals, which start flowing through our veins and have certain effects in the body. Now, this chemical reaction is triggered by our brain, obviously, and it's good to realize that it's actually a zone in the brain which is very old, which we share with all animals, which is also the same zone which is controlling our heartbeat, which is controlling our body temperature, it's controlling our breathing. So it's really, really, really a very basic, fundamental thing of not even being human, but just being a living animal. When talking about stress, you often hear the term of stress peaks. Well, what is a stress peak? Looking at stress level over time, it starts at 0. then something happens which we call a stressor, and our body decides, hey, it's time for stress, which means some hormones are being released in our blood, and our body reacts to that. So then we're at the highest stress level until something else happens, which makes our body decide, okay, now it's time to de-stress. And then we have other hormones which take the stress level back down. So this is a typical stress peaks. What I would like you to remember here is that just two different sets of hormones, one moving the stress up, one taking it back down. What is stress actually designed for? This kind of situations. You probably heard that before. Stress is actually a survival mechanism for dangerous situations. Stress brings you in your flight or fight mode, draws all resources to this pure survival. What's the risk here is that, well, 100,000 years ago, this could actually happen, meeting a dangerous animal in the wild and having to deal with it. So that's what stress designed for. That made us survive. Nowadays, the amount of tigers you meet on the streets is very limited. And our stress system reacts on different parts, different situations, which it was not originally designed for. Okay, how does the stress system look like? Not going into details, but there's actually one part focusing on stress, part of the nervous system focusing there. If those hormones are released, what do you get? Your heart starts beating faster. Your airways open up, so you get already more energy flowing in your body. Your liver starts putting more sugar in your blood. So again, more energy. This is on a physical level, but also on a mental level. You get really, really focused on one thing, solving that problem, living through that encounter with a tiger. The other, there's a balancing part in the nervous system, which actually brings everything back to normal. Make sure your heartbeat goes down again, you're breathing slower, and you're just getting in standard operation mode. No need to remember the details, just to remember stress is survival, creates an extreme focus, and is focused at one single goal, survival. The other state in which you're not stressed is actually our default. You could call that the standard operation mode of our body. That's what our body, our organs are actually designed for. The difference between those two is in energy it costs to maintain it. Obviously, our standard operation mode is quite energy efficient. I mean, we're an efficient system, our body, while stress takes quite some energy. You need energy to have that stress reaction, and it's not energy, but just eating more that you can fix it. Because as you saw before, the body is draining resources from other vital systems in order to have that stress mechanism. So this is important to realize. Stress costs energy. Two pitfalls with stress in our normal day life. First pitfall is related to the stress peak. This kind of stress peak behavior is what we are designed for. Some peaks, but you also see that the peaks fall back to zero, and the baseline is actually zero. So our system has time to recuperate. Most people today have more this kind of stress situation where you have many more peaks. The peaks are not the problem. We can deal with those. The risk here is that the baseline is no longer zero, but has moved up. So we're on a constant stress level, which is not extremely high, but still it's there. If you're in a startup like you guys, probably your stress curve or graph looks more like this, which means your baseline is not really there, but it's far more higher up. So it means you're constantly using energy and using your body, using your machinery for something it was never designed for, or evolution never made it that way. So that's one pitfall related to stress. A second pitfall is our imagination. And I'd like to do a little experiment here with you. I would just like you to, it's a pity I cannot see you. I'd like you to just close your eyes for a second. Nothing scary is going to happen, no worry. And I'll just tell you a little story and just follow it and follow along. I'd like you to imagine that you're in your kitchen, looking around, nice sunny day. And in your kitchen, there's a fruit bowl with some apples, maybe bananas, and there's a lemon. So I would like you to imagine yourself walking over there, taking the lemon, feeling the typical feel of that citric fruit. Smelling, you smell a little acidic smell. So you take the lemon and walk over to your kitchen drawer. And I want you to imagine taking a knife there and cutting the lemon in two halves. You feel the juice running on your hand. The smell becomes stronger. And take one of those halves and cut it again. So you have a nice wedge of lemon. Take that wedge in your hand, bring it to your nose, smell it, really strong, the smell. And then take it to your mouth and have a good bite in it. Okay, that's it. You can open up your eyes again. If you followed, you can say in the chat window if something happened to you. I would be very curious to hear. Usually with a real audience, I can actually see the people's faces change when they are supposedly biting the lemon. And it's really strange because actually nothing is happening. It's yes, saliva indeed. Thank you, Tim. While everything I did was just tell you a story and you're just sitting on your chair and listening to me. This is the power of our brain, the power of our imagination, which is nice for those story. Pavlov's law, indeed. This is also what works with stress. The key takeaway here is if you're thinking about something stressy, it actually, your body reacts as if you're living it, as if it's really happening. So the key risk there is worrying. People who are worrying about all sort of stuff which causes stress, actually it makes your stress level already rise. So, and it's not a big peak, but it's again preventing you from going to that zero baseline again. Okay, so that's for stress. Just to summarize, I would like you to remember stress is a survival mechanism. It creates focus, alertness. Obviously, this is one of the good things we will want to use later on. However, it costs energy, which means you cannot be on a constant stress, in a constant stress mode. And there's two pitfalls, this constant stress. So consuming too much energy, and worrying our imagination, which is causing stress. Right. So that for the, I see the gin tonic. Hey, that's good. That's good. So, sorry, I just have a glass of water for me. I hope you can take the gin tonic. Moving forward now, starting on your personal stress plan. I have a template for that. I haven't given it to you yet because in the first phase, it's more useful to just take a pen, have some paper and write down stuff. I'll make sure you get the template after this session, right? So we start with the negative part of stress. Why? Because it's impossible to talk about stress without talking about the risk and the pitfalls of stress. Most people, when saying, oh, I'm stressed, they're talking about this kind of situations, feeling overwhelmed, too many inputs coming at you, or losing temper, getting angry or crying a lot, or getting pain, headaches, muscle pain. Actually, this is not really stress. These are alarm bells telling you you've had too much stress for too long time. This is your body telling you something. Quite similar if you're you like to do sports outside, if you go running, if your knee starts hurting. first time it hurts, it's not that much of a problem, but it gets getting worse and worse and worse and worse. That's an alarm bell. Your body telling you, hey, you're putting too much strain on your knee. Same with stress. Your body, if you have those alarm bells, it's telling you, do something, change. And there's two sets of alarm bells. I'm not going to read all of those aloud. You can do so. This first page are the internal alarm bells. Emotions, trouble sleeping, a feeling of stress all the time, pain. It's not if you have a bad night of sleep or you have a headache that you have to worry, obviously not. But if this is getting more and more and more and building up, that can really be an alarm bell. It's also more about change in patterns. If you've always been a good sleeper and now you sleep badly, that's could be an alarm bell. Or if you've always, for instance, if you never liked crowds, well, then obviously that's not stress related. A good resource there is the link below, burnoutassessmenttool.be. It's a University of Leuven project, which focuses on those alarm bells. So if you're concerned one way or another, check that website. Those are the internal alarm bells. There's also external alarm bells. So for some people, a bit surprising, but people around you, use them as resources. Family, friends, co-workers. When they start saying, hey, you look tired or nervous or just you look bad, or we don't see you anymore, or hey, it looks like you've changed. Those can be alarm bells as well. So it's good to be aware and not do the thing everybody always does. Oh no, it's nothing. It's fine. If this comes back, keeps coming back, you might be having too much stress. What do you do in that kind of case? Well, if you have too many alarm bells, you will need to hit the emergency brake. Gearing down, changing habits quite drastically, but I would definitely recommend you to seek help, either a psychologist or a certified stress coach like myself. Do not try to keep moving on because it will only get worse. Okay, now I would like you to work a little bit with, just take your pen and your paper and think just very briefly for yourself, what internal alarm bells do you have? Who could help you as an external alarm bell? Who's honest enough with you to say this kind of thing? What could you do? What emergency brakes do you have? Just take a minute or so to note down some things. And in the meanwhile, I can tell you a bit about how I do it, because I had some alarm bells going off a month, 2 months ago with the lockdown, kids being at home. They needed teaching at home. And for one of them, it's quite a challenge. While I was trying to work at the same time, and it was really one of my alarm bells is how I react to them. And I'm usually a very patient, relaxed guy. My temper was going up really crazy and I had trouble sleeping again. So then I said, alarm bells, let's change some things. So what I did is postpone some work things, I increased my currency of running again, did some more meditation so that I started to feel back relaxed. So I hope in the meanwhile you had some time to write down some things for yourself. Hopefully you will never need this, but fact is, if you're too deep into this, you're too much drawn into it and you don't recognize it anymore. So thinking about it now will help you creating this helicopter view on it. Okay, so that was the first level, knowing your alarm bells. The second level, dealing with negative stress. What do we call negative stress? It's very often related to negative experience where you have no control about. It can be problems, financial or others. It can be conflicts with people, cause negative stress for quite some folks. It can be somebody close to you who is very ill or died, so that obviously are sources of stress as well. Negative stress can also be related to certain patterns, a lack of planning skills, for instance, lack of assertiveness, perfectionism are things that patterns that may lead to negative stress. And often it's also related to worrying. Thinking about the financial problems which might occur is also obviously a form of negative stress. I won't go into that much deeper here. What you have to do there is take as much action as you can. And action can be quite rational. You can, for the problems you might be experiencing, you can design a plan B. You may need to learn new habits or new skills to break patterns. But it can also be much softer on the emotional side. If you just lost somebody, you will need to take time to grieve. There's no other way around it. Often it can also help to find a better mindset, a better viewpoint to things. Some things you might have to just let go or accept that things go wrong and not the way you like it. So some things are very rational, other things are more intangible, more emotional. Why is it important here? This is again about the energy level that I discussed before. This negative stress is bringing you in the red zone of energy. It's costing energy to your body, to your system, energy which you cannot use for other positive, more effective things. One form of an action can also be is to talk with somebody about it, and talk to a mentor, a coworker, a professional can help you as well. Okay, but important here is taking action. So just very briefly on this part, think about it for yourself. What are negative stress factors in your life today? Factors that may occur in the near future, and think briefly about the actions you are taking already or are going to take now, knowing how much energy this costs. For instance, while you are thinking about yourself, I'll talk about myself again. Perfectionism is one of the patterns I have to watch out for. So I have somebody coaching me on that, and I already feel how that is saving me energy. So that's good. I also had a personal loss several years ago, but still, there's 1 or 2 weeks a year when I feel it a lot, and I know that I have to plan my agenda accordingly. That is not the best period to have a lot of other stress on me. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something you have to take into account. Okay, good. After the bad, let's move on to the positive side of stress, because that's what we're here for. What is positive stress? Positive stress is often related to positive experiences. You might get the next big step in your startup. I don't know what that is for you guys, but obviously that will give you positive stress, because it will give you a lot of work, a lot of time spent on it, but also a lot of energy and joy you get from it. So that may be a source of positive stress. For some people, positive stress may be moving to a new place, a much better place, but still you have to pack everything. You have to refurbish the new place. You have to unpack all sort of decisions. Can cause stress for some people. On another personal level, your child deciding it's time to get an own character, or even whether that's at the age of 2 or at puberty. You may, as a parent, decide that that's wonderful, but still it will cause you stress because there's a lot of conflicts involved. So these are also sources which you could call positive stress. Now imagine those three being combined. A very busy, hectic time at work while you have to move to a new apartment, and your kid is changing a lot of things and causing conflicts. Obviously, this will not be a perfect scenario. So yes, perfect positive stress, use it, but be cautious. It's still a form of stress. And if you add too much, you will still suffer consequences, and it will still bend over to the negative side. One way of looking at positive stress is a really old way, the Yerkes-Dodson law of human performance. This figure is about 100 years old. What did they say? Well, if there's a lack of stress, people get bored. But there's an optimal stress level where people get engaged, focus, work feels effortless. And their recommendation was to keep your employees at that level of stress, the optimal or peak performance. Because what they also observed, if you put more stress than that, people start to get tired, get ill, break down. So that's not the zone you want to be. That zone they call distress, negative stress, also called positive stress. The optimal stress is sometimes called eustress as well. So that way is definitely looking at stress from a positive side. A different view on something similar on the same is what's called the general adaptation syndrome. What happens when you get stress? Firstly, in the beginning of the curve, the first phase, when the stress factor occurs, you get a little bit a dip in your stress resistance or your performance. Those two unlinked, you could say. So you're a bit less. You can deal less with the stress, but after a while, your system resists to it, gets used to it, and you get on a peak level, stress resistance. So that's where you want to be. That's where you can really cope with stress much better and perform much better. But here again, there's a pitfall, a risk. If you have too much stress, exhaustion sets in, and there are some versions of this graph where it ends in death to the right of it. And that's actually true. You can die of too much stress. Okay, so that's one way of looking at positive stress. And I would like to ask you again to think about it. What do you already do to create peak performance through stress? Mostly people do things already. For instance, myself, what I do is strategically postponing things. If I have too much time for things, I'm not working efficiently. So I need to postpone to be more efficient. So this is a good one as well to share experiences and practices of what you do. So if you are doing things to use stress in this way, feel free to add them to the chat window. I'll check it on the right here. Okay, yeah. So the question is added as a question. Let's see if I can see those questions. Yeah. How to know at what stress levels they are? This is not hard science with exact, let's say, boundaries between them. It's mostly about listening to what your body tells you, if that's not too fluffy. But if you're and we will come to the positive stress more here in this part. So maybe that answered the question. But if you start hearing your alarm bells, then you're too far. That's and 1 or 2 alarm bells is not a big thing. It's just be aware and move back a little bit. Yeah, Kathleen saying that you also need the deadlines really close. Yes, so that's one coming back a lot. So this one, stress for peak performance is one way of procrastination. Yeah, that creates stress as well. So this was the first way of using stress in a positive way. A second way is related to your comfort zone. You probably heard of the concept of comfort zone. What's your comfort zone? It's those sets of activities, tasks, which you feel comfortable about, safe, stable, which are easy. That zone is also related with feeling unchallenged a bit, sometimes even bored or lifeless. If it's only comfort, well, it can be a bit boring. Outside the comfort zone, the second zone is called the panic zone often. That's a zone where you feel stressed, tense, frustrated, may have you feel afraid, also exhausted, tiring. It's tiring being there all the time. Now, the good thing in this picture is that there's a third zone on the border between comfort zone and panic zone. And that zone is the learning zone, or the stretch zone, which is actually stretching your comfort zone. And by being in that zone, you will actually broaden up your comfort zone. You all know, first thing you do something, it feels uneasy, but if you're used to it, then that becomes part of your comfort zone. Well, this zone where it feels uneasy, that's typically related to feeling excited, challenged, anticipating, willing to risk, and also I like the word alive. Then you know you're really living. So this learning zone is also a positive stress zone. How do you know it's stress? What I hear from a lot of people and what I experience as well is, depending on how I feel, whether I had a good night's sleep or whether I had at the end of a very heavy day, things which are in my learning zone in the morning can be in my panic zone in the evening. The morning feeling very, very confident yet excited that yes, I can do this and I'm gonna take the challenge. While in the evening, I can really feel, no, I cannot do this. I'm overwhelmed. So that's typically, I think, for something in the learning zone, it balances a bit. So learning zone is also a positive stress zone. So what I would like you to do is look at it from that perspective. What are you learning? Which activities, for instance, cause stress but are still in your learning zone, and not in your panic zone, I mean. And also ask yourself the question, what do you want to learn, or do you want to learn this? If some activity is in your learning zone, but looking at it, you actually decide, no, that's not for me to learn. I mean, somebody else can do it better than I do. Then it's best to shift the task. If you're working with two people in your startup and one is good at the one thing and you're not good at it, it has no much use trying to learn it. You can just give it to the other guy. I mean, working with your talents and what your strengths are and what you want to learn. Okay. Yep. Hey, thank you, Sander, because hey, that's good. That's cool. Let's just finish this. The learning. Have you noted some learning things for yourself? Good. Then we go to the next slide. As Sander already announced, the topic of flow by the Hungarian Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Hey, I practiced on that. It's an Hungarian-American psychologist. What he describes as flow is a mental state where you're getting totally drawn into something, you're feeling energized, focused, totally involved in it, and joy, fun. Csikszentmihalyi. Great. Yeah. Hey, that will make it easy next time. So Sander, you obviously know already about it. This is typically this is one of the key concept linked to positive stress, because all of you who've experienced it, you know that this is absolutely positive. You're drawn into it and fully focused. Remember the single goal with the tiger that I talked to you in the beginning. Fully focused on that one talk and your task, and you're reaching. Wow, you're making leaps while working on it. But at the same time, most obviously, if you get out of it, you feel that you've consumed quite some energy. You feel a bit tired, and that's not a problem. It's just natural body reaction. Now, how do you get into flow? Flow is defined as a combination of a high challenge task and a high which you need high skills for, where your skill level is high at the same time. I know. I see. You don't see my mouse pointer here. Okay, no problem. Just looking at the top side of the graph. If something is highly challenging for you, but you don't have the skills, you're just afraid for it. That's the total panic. You cannot do it. If your skill level is medium, you get aroused, you get excited about it. It's good. It's already much better. But if the challenge is high, and at the same time you can really do it, then that's the perfect ingredient for getting into flow. Looking at the other action from flow, moving down, if it's something you can do really good, but the challenge is only medium, then you're more a sense of control. Your autopilot can do it, and you just do it, and you don't feel that energy. If there's no challenge at all, then, well, you're just relaxed, and it's nice as well to be relaxed, but it won't get you as far as a state of flow. So that's more the definition and how flow relates to as a mental state to other states. There are some things you can do to reach that state of flow more easily. One first crucial thing is avoiding distractions, both externally and internally. What do I mean by external distraction here? This very nice device is a great source of external distraction. So put it away. Also, your email program, close it. Try to put yourself in a room where there's not too many people falling in or coming in. But also internal distractions. I always need a pen and notepad just to write down what comes in my head at some point, put it on the paper, so I know I won't forget it, but I can deal with it later. So avoiding distractions is crucial. Setting a clear task and goal when you start already helps to focus your body, your mind on that task and make sure you maximally achieve it. Choose a time for it, not only a fixed time slot, but also time in day. Some people work better in the morning, others work better in the evening. So obviously it's most efficient to do those tasks at that time. And condition yourself. Tim, you already mentioned it. This is Pavlov again. Specific music, a trigger, something, a mantra for yourself can work. A routine can also work, because that helps your body already realizing, hey, it's time for flow. So once again, time for yourself to write down, to think about what you do and what helps you to get into flow, or what you're going to try to get into flow. What I do, for instance, is always when I start working, I put on a shirt. Not that I like shirts, but it brings me already in the work mode. I have my Spotify playlist as well. Thank you, Johnny, for sharing yours. Those kind of things, putting my cell phone away, obviously, having my notepad, that helped me to get into flow. And I have to work in the morning. Evenings are not good for me for that. Leaving my emails until after my flow moment is also a good thing. So those things, what do you do? If some of you want to share, Tim and Johnny, you already did some. If maybe you have other tips and tricks from your Bible. So feel free to share so we can learn from each other. Well, I see nothing coming now, but yep. Getting up really early, designated spot to work. Yep, absolutely. That was a challenge for me with the Corona lockdown because both my husband and I were working from home. There were kids here, so it was really, yeah. You feel it right away that you're not in your spot, and it's too much mixing. So, yeah, physical activity. Physical activity is actually a very good one to get your stress level down with the hormones that are released during the activity. So that also helps then. So you start from good baseline, and that helps to really focus and concentrate. Yep. Thanks for the video. I won't watch it now. I'll do it later. Jonathan, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. You can keep on posting. Yeah, noise canceling headphones. Yes. Definitely if you're in this in a crowded office space, like I've seen the office in Leuven, I would recommend you to use a noise canceling headphone. So we covered now 3 ways of using positive stress. What's really important to realize is that it is still a form of stress. It's not the highest stress peak, but it's still a form of stress. So you need to balance, you need to compensate, you need to make sure that your baseline is getting low again. There's lots of things you can do to compensate. Taking a break is a great thing, a great activity to compensate. And then I'm talking about the real break, not cell phone, Facebook, because that's again that keeps on adding inputs to your brain. No, a real break. Connect with people, talk with people. If you're in a co-working space, have a coffee break and talk about hobbies, work for 5 minutes. Have fun. It's as simple as that. Laugh about something. Also a great way to bring your stress level down. Some physical exercise. If you're not a big sports fan, go for a walk. 10 minutes of outside air is great. Great for getting your stress level down. There's a psychologist who claims that if you walk outside for half an hour a day, you will never get a burnout. And then in a day-to-day basis, make sure you get enough sleep because your brain is cleaning up is cleaning up a lot of things while you're sleeping. And the typical relaxing things, relaxing music, take a hot bath. I don't know. Now, it's not that you need to spend a day at the wellness sauna to be relaxed. I mean, it's perfectly fine to do more active things, but things which take down your stress level. Tim, learning is not good to relieve stress. Good question. It would depend, I think, on your learning style. If you are a really focused learner, and this is not only about stress, but also your brain activity. Learning is like reading from a book. That kind of learning is really using the same brain patterns as working. So it would be better to deconnect and do something else. But there's other types of learning as well. If you're really studying something, I think it will still, maybe it's, I'm thinking whether it's really stress or more about the effort in your brain. I would anyway recommend you to deconnect as well. Any other questions or remarks?
In the Ask a Question section, we have Jonathan from Deselect, and he asks, any suggestions on how to not be distracted by people coming in or walking by in a co-working space?
That's a tough one. What I would there's two forms of distraction. One is just the visual thing. If you see a lot of things happening behind your computer screen, you might come up with a way to create a wall there, or not a real wall, but just to visually make sure that your computer screen is big enough, or your view is actually covered and you don't see too many people. That's one thing you could do. Another risk is just people asking things or coming for a coffee break, which is very good, but not when you're working. There, I would very clearly indicate that you are working. Some people do it with a sign, "Don't disturb me, I'm working." Something as that, or you can tell people, or if you find that too obvious, use something else, talk with people on how you want to do it. But people usually accept it if they know you're working, to not bother you and come back at a later time. So that's a second tip I would give you. Yep. Breathing as well. Breathing is a very good way of taking a breath, because just deep and slow breathing is a very I was going to say irrational, but non-rational way of telling your body that everything is fine. A deep breath is what our body associates with, hey, everything is safe. There's no tigers in the woods. So if you do that deliberately, you already tell your system on a very, very deep, basic level that it is safe. So your stress level will decrease as well. Yep, a very good one. Okay, so that was the fourth part in level 3 of your personal stress plan, compensating. On the fourth level, there's building resilience. I haven't put much into that because the previous session was on resilience. Just briefly, what is resilience? Because some people tend to think resilience is not bending your head when you're being hit by something. Always keep smiling, for instance, which is not resilience. Resilience, I like to compare it with this spring here, this coil. If you press it, it will go down. I mean, obviously. But what resilience is, if you release it, it will jump back up. So also for yourself, if something bad happens, if there's a failure, or you lose somebody or some project, or something goes wrong, yes, you will feel sad and maybe depressed for some time. But if your resilience is good, you will recover from it much more easily. So resilience helps you get to a zero stress level much easier. Like I said, I just put some basic resilience 101 tips on the screen here, because that's not the main topic. But what definitely works is taking care of your body. Eat, sleep, practice are things, if you don't do it, which cause stress. So just taking care on that basic level already helps for your resilience. Practicing healthy thoughts, the way you look at things, at life, at problems. It's related to that worrying. Your thoughts are very strong. So there as well, that's something which strengthens your resilience. Finding purpose in life, a goal, both in business and life, helps. Connecting with people. We're all social creatures. That helps. Things like mindfulness, meditation, breathing exercises, all work. For some people, it's too fluffy and they get stressed when they hear about it. So then I would say, yeah, well, leave it behind. There's no use getting stressed by it. But it has been proven that it works. So here as well, for yourself, what do you do already to strengthen your resilience? And have you come up with some ideas either now or in the previous session or in some other well-being workshop that you already attended, which you can add to the list? because this is really your basis of being strong with stress. So a good one to focus on as well. Good. So that by now you've covered all levels of this personal stress plan. Just briefly to summarize, the first two levels, the negative part, this is mainly about conserving energy, making sure you don't waste your energy on things which are not very useful. Then on the positive stress part, realize what you can do to use your stress peak performance. Be conscious about your learning zone, when to use it and what you are learning. And use flow, get yourself in a state of flow. 3 ways of using stress in a positive way. But be aware, it's still stress, you need to compensate. So have your actions ready on a day-to-day basis, do stuff that actually compensates stress for you. And then resilience as the basis. Okay, that's the end of my workshop, of our workshop here. Are there any questions you have? We still have a few minutes, so feel free to ask them in the question window. Also, make sure that you get the file. Maybe if I stop sharing, I can send it to you right away. I just wanted to give you, in the end, if you want to reach out to me, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I don't know who you are, guys. You've seen me now, so I'm always glad to connect. You have my website, email address, phone number. Also, if you liked the workshop, I'm always helped with a good review on Google or a recommendation on LinkedIn or on Facebook. You know how it goes. That helps my business. I was also discussing with Aurélien maybe to have the opportunity to have one-on-one sessions or to offer you one-on-one sessions, but we will talk on that later again. So, well, thank you all.